Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fidelity Next, our webcast that helps take students to the next level in their career journey. I'm your host, Emily Enenwevo. Throughout the year, we've had the pleasure of sitting down with many individuals currently enrolled in our student program as they share their insights and perspectives of working at Fidelity Canada. As 2024 comes to an end, we are very happy to have one last student on the show to wrap up our student co-op discussions. So please welcome to the FidelityNext stage, Vicki Yang. Vicki is currently working in the Client Services Department and is a three-time returning co-op student of the program. Vicki, welcome. So great to have you here in studio.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
So happy to have you here. Now, before we dive into your experience at Fidelity Canada, like I mentioned, you've been here for 3 terms. We kind of start our student shows with a sort of rapid-fire question round. So if you're ready, we're going to get to know you better through a few questions. I got the buzzer here. And
Absolutely.
and I got 30 seconds on the clock. So don't look at the questions. They're surprises. No. So let's start 30 seconds now. Okay, are you a morning person or night owl, would you say?
Definitely night owl.
Okay. And your favorite drink to order at the barista?
Vanilla latte, but half sweet.
Okay, good choice. And your favorite lunch spot when you're here at the office?
Definitely Freshie. They had one in the office when I was in the mall.
Okay, that's a good spot. And okay, here's one. A corporate term that sort of makes you cringe, would you say?
It would be Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, or TGIF, right?
Yes.
Okay, beach or mountains?
Beach.
And over 30 seconds there. Okay, I was lost track of time. Okay, got that all squeezed in. So, Vicki, like I mentioned, you've been here for 3 terms at Fidelity Canada. You're currently in client services. Can you explain to the audience what CS does and what your typical day-to-day looks like, would you say?
Absolutely. So CS deals with a lot of front-end work with clients and investors, advisors as well that Fidelity has. Particularly, I'm working in the ASC right now, so the Advisor Service Center. And with that role, it's more of fielding and taking calls from clients, investors, advisors who might be looking to gain access to their accounts, maybe get transfer details, and sort of their day-to-day my day-to-day kind of looks like that. So fielding those calls. And with CS, we work a lot with every department in Fidelity. And so that's kind of where CS is for me.
Okay, and now you're in CS right now, but your very first term here at Fidelity Canada was sales, which I take it is different than CS. You started in advisor sales. To me, when I hear the sales environment, I think fast-paced, I think lots on the go. Was that experience like that for you? What was sales like for you in your co-op term?
Yeah, it was. So I came into Fidelity not really having a clear idea on what sales would be like here. When I used to think of sales, I would think of, this is the transaction ends after you make the transaction. And so it doesn't really go beyond maybe a purchase. But at Fidelity, I find that sales is a lot more about the relationship aspect. And the fast-pacedness of it is that you're dealing with a lot and a very high number of advisors all the time. They may be people in a region that you're not familiar with. It might be outside of Toronto, which is where I currently work. Yeah. And so that was interesting for me to learn. I wasn't really a very spoken person. I like to do a lot more of the back end work, but sales is very, very, very
front-facing.
Front-facing, yeah. And it's just interesting to get to interact with clients, being pushed out of my comfort zone, having to speak to people outside of the team. And so that was just very, very exciting for me to learn.
Well, you've been here for 3 terms, so now over a year with Fidelity Canada. I'm sure there's something that keeps on pulling you back, the learning, the culture here. What would you say makes Fidelity Canada so unique, Vicki?
It's definitely the people and the sheer number of opportunities that you get here. As a student, the student program does a really good job of making sure that you have a very holistic view on the entire company. Yeah. And so with the student program in particular, something that's very common is that students might start out in one department, but they typically end up in another one. They like to, for their next returning terms, they might go to, for example, if you went in marketing, you might end up in advisor sales. If you started in CS, you might be looking at even a different department, for example, FCC Finance. And so everything really, you get to move around a lot, you get to learn from every department. And I think that's really important as a student, because when you go into your co-op terms, you're really there to explore and find out what you like, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. And so being able to go into these different departments is really helpful for that aspect.
Yeah, I've heard that from other students who've been on the show, that they really nurture your interests and your strengths and your skills. Can you sort of lay out the whole process, Vicki, in terms of how, Fidelity works with students through each term to kind of figure out their next career move or their next interest or their next choice of department? Like, how does that sort of work as you go through the different co-op terms here, if you choose to do multiple terms?
Yeah, so with the terms, if you're looking to return, of course, your first term matters. It's something that you typically interview for.
Yeah.
And even with your subsequent roles, you will interview for them as well, potentially.
Okay.
And with the returns and the calibration of that, the HR department, as well as the student recruitment team, they take a look at your manager's feedback. They take a look at what you've done throughout the semester. And they do a really good job of understanding what you're good at and what you're maybe needing to improve on. And so they may place you in roles that you might not even have expected to be in yourself. For me personally, I actually didn't apply for advisor sales at first.
Oh, they kind of thought that would suit you.
Yeah, so I applied for another role on the team. And after my interview and after speaking with the people on the team, I was extended an offer for advisor sales at first. And I took it, and I think that it was a really great choice for me because I learned about an industry that I didn't really know going in. I didn't have a finance background. And so it's really nice to have people know your strengths and be so good at reading you and what you might be good at.
See your potential that you may not even see, that, hey, you would be well suited in that role. You talked about the interview process. Can you give students watching out there some 3 or 4 tips on how to prep for the interview? Because sometimes that's always like a nerve-wracking part of the process, right?
Absolutely. With the interview process, I think the most important part is to ask questions.
Okay.
So even during, before, and after your interview, ask questions. Find out what you're interested in. Find out about the role, talk to students, talk to people on the team, and reach out. Everyone is so welcome here, and everyone loves to help each other out. There's a very big open door policy at Fidelity, which is really nice because if you ever have a question, there's someone who is willing to help you and is able to help you. And so for students, definitely 1 is ask questions. 2 is find out what you actually want to do. And figure out what you like and what you think your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Okay. And take your co-op experiences, your interviews, and look back at it and ask yourself, was I right or was I wrong? And sort of go from there.
Or
and
like what parts you can improve on, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like what you think you might want to work on next. Yeah. And thirdly, just do a lot of interviews. Do mock interviews if you have to.
Oh, that's what you mean, like practice.
Practice, yeah, essentially. Just practice as much as you can, get out of your comfort zone, and put yourself out there.
That's excellent advice. Now, in your role at in CS, or even in your roles in advisor sales and FCC, was there one thing like you learned about yourself that you were surprised about? And can you also explain or describe a challenge that you overcame?
Yes, I would say the biggest thing that I learned about myself is that I like problem solving. I like looking at something and asking myself, like, is there another way to approach this? Can I do this a different way? Right. And because I was able to work in both FCC sales and advisor sales, as well as CS, the nature of these roles are so different. The sales cycle in particular is very different between FCC and advisor sales. And so how you would approach, for example, prospecting would be very, very different for both sales and also for client services. That aspect of my role, it's about how you approach the client. And so problem solving is definitely the biggest thing that I've learned that I do enjoy doing. The biggest challenge would be sort of just adjusting between the roles because you're so focused on the role itself for 4 months straight. And because you're so well integrated into the team at the end of it, it can be a little difficult to adapt and shift to a very different aspect of the business. But I would say that the team is very welcoming in that aspect, so there's really no concern or
Is there a lot of
hesitation.
training though? If you do switch into a different department, do you feel like there was training for you? They helped you, they prepped you, or is it sort of like learning as you go?
It's learning as you go, but also with the training. There's student training, which is run by the student team, and also there's also the training that you receive that's job specific.
Yeah.
It really depends on the role that you do, but you're not going to be thrown into the deep end. You're going to have a lot of support and help on the way, and so there's nothing to be afraid of.
That's great to hear that Fidelity really sets you up for success really before you go into your roles. That's great. Now, for students who may be hesitant in jumping into financial services, may not know the industry, what would you say to them? Because I know you mentioned that you have the business background, but not necessarily finance. What would you say to them to sort of overcome some of those concerns?
I would definitely say make sure that you're being proactive. Don't just wait for something to fall in your lap. Make sure that you understand what you're missing. Find a way to fill those knowledge gaps, whether that's through extra courses, asking a lot of questions, and just being aware of what you need to know. Having a finance background isn't necessarily necessary for some of the roles here. Yeah. However, having an interest and being willing to do the research and to fill those knowledge gaps is definitely the biggest way to approach a field that you might not be familiar with.
Yeah, good point, good point. Vicki, how would you describe the culture here at Fidelity?
The culture here, I think that the culture is very open. There's an open door policy, as I've mentioned. Everyone is willing and eager to help. The student aspect of that, it's very tight-knit actually. I think that the students really like to do a lot of activities together. We learn from each other, and even when I'm in the office, you might not be sitting necessarily with your team if you're the only student, but because of sort of the layout of the office, you get to sit around with everyone that you kind of maybe not even work with directly. And it's a great way to sort of get an understanding of the company as well, beyond just what the student program has to offer, because when you're sitting with other students in the area, you're kind of able to get an understanding. You get to see their day-to-day as well, and it's just very nice.
That's really great to hear. And Fidelity is sort of, the office is separated into different neighborhoods, and we have a great cafe here and on-site barista, which is always a nice perk if you're a coffee drinker. Lastly, Vicki, what would you say has been the best part of your student experience here at Fidelity so far?
I would say the best part is definitely the opportunities that you get to learn and to expand. It's, I think the saying, you put in what you want to get out of it is very, very true with internships, and that rings especially true at Fidelity. When you're looking for opportunities to improve yourself and improve your role, there's always opportunities out there. You can ask anyone from any department for a chat. They would be more than happy to sit down with you, sort of share their day-to-day. And so there's never a shortage of excitement and things that you can do and learn. And so that's something that I've really enjoyed about Fidelity in my term here as a student.
That's amazing. So great opportunity, sounds like, for professional and personal growth.
Absolutely.
So we've been happy to have you here at FidelityNext, Vicki, and good luck in your future career choices. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to everybody who tuned in today. We hope you're feeling inspired to be on the lookout for more upcoming student opportunities. Our next recruitment window for the 2025 summer term will be in early January, so be sure to keep an eye out for ways to apply. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next year on Fidelity Next.